Today I have Aaron Marks with me here, founder of a new stealth startup, former longtime builder in fintech. Um, Maybe let's get started with what you can share about your background, your new project, and get into it. Excited to have you on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, kind of creeping out of stealth here, right? So we haven't really been talking about it much openly, and so excited to be able to have a little chat. Yeah, I mean, so I've been in payments and fintech basically my entire career. I started for a really small startup in the merchant processing space. This was, I don't want to age myself, but this was like sort of at the dawn of really like Square starting to emerge when it was just like the little plug-in into a phone, and that was really super disruptive. And we were on the merchant side, and we're like, well, how are we going to respond to that? And then Stripe started to emerge, and the company was forward thinking in the extent of like started to see like what was happening and acquiring some small software companies around registration and billing and invoicing and things like that and embedding the payments into it. So I really got my start, really understanding what embedded payments start to look like. Was I left there and went to work for American Express, where I spent almost 6 years. Their mainly focus moved from the merchant side over onto the issuing side of the business. And I think a lot of people think of Amex as like the cards, platinum cards, and things like that. But there's actually a really robust B2B business. And so I was focused on this like global commercial payments business. And so we would do things like integrate into ERPs and sit between the buyer and the supplier. So like really like but it was very outdated, the system. I mean, it's amazing. It feels somewhat seamless to the users, but like we're extracting payment instruction files, moving them into the cloud, pulling them down. It's very like it's very old school. And Yeah, spent a good amount of time there, and then eventually caught the crypto bug. And I remember actually it was like one of those like town halls, and the CEO, Steve Squeri, amazing CEO, but he was asked like flat out on the call about Bitcoin and gave a very unfavorable answer. And I had recently been promoted. I was like managing a team, and I was on this like the typical corporate
Yeah,
ladder track.
you're on the track. Uh-huh.
And I like remember I went up and I like that day I went up and talked to my wife, and I was like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna quit Amex."
That day.
Yeah, I didn't quit that day, but I was like, I
So,
knew, I heard the answer, and I was like, I just don't, I can't. I was already like obsessed with the idea of blockchain and crypto and started learning about stable coins. I was saying, I was like, I can't, I couldn't see
CBDCs
myself there.
back then.
What's
CBDCs.
that?
Weren't they called
Yeah,
CBDC? Yeah, yeah.
there's all kinds of stuff going on. So, um,
Interesting. So how, that's cool. So I have a lot of questions based on that. So uh how did you learn about crypto? Was it through kind of Amex and I because at the time there was a lot of talk about emerging technology in banking, and blockchain in banking was certainly one of the kind of topics that at least I had heard of back in the day. And so curious, like, what was that like? Like, did you kind of pick it up through that, or was it through other venues?
so it's funny. I was actually the annoying guy, like talking to all the traditional payments people about blockchain because I picked it up through friends, really. So like I had friends who knew that I was in the payment space, and they were like, "You gotta look at this, and you gotta check this out." And so it was like, I think a friend, either I can't remember if it was through like a Zoom or if like a friend came over, or probably not even Zoom, some sort of video chat, or if a friend came over and they like helped me download a MetaMask wallet and like set it up, and then I got completely sucked in to like the DeFi world like really quickly, and I mean. I lost so much money. I made so many terrible mistakes
Yeah.
and like over leveraging and doing things in liquidation and getting caught up in various sort of like pump and dump scams and different things like that. But at the same time, I was like just mystified by it because here I am working at this company and I'm watching like really old, efficient system, sort of like this very traditional kind of like spreadsheet based, like sending, pulling, like all these things happening. And there's something that has to sit in the middle of every single transaction, right? And here we are, where I'm like logged into these various platforms and there's nobody there. It's all code. And it was like, it just blew my mind. Like it blew my mind. And that's when I was, again, started to get obsessive and people were like, I'd be like at a company like happy hour or something. People are like, all right, here this guy goes again talking about.
Wow, that's awesome. And so would you say like the turning point was kind of realizing that there weren't any middlemen in this kind of system that you were so used to looking at every day, the arduous kind of COBOL-based ledger system that you were dealing with? Was it
Yeah.
that turning? Because usually people with your background, they just think this is, potentially a scam or BS. And so, what was that turning point for you?
Yeah. It was 100% that. It would like
Mm,
I was interested in the tokens and thinking of it as an asset, but like I quickly moved off of that. And that was basically the comment that from the CEO that threw me off. It was like very like asset focused. Oh, it's going to go up in value, down in value. It was like I think people were thinking about it from that lens, at least a lot of the people in my space, in my world. And like I was looking at it from like a transaction standpoint. Like how does a transaction flow? Who approves the transaction? Like what happens if it fails? Like all those things started like I started to look into that and or looking at a blockchain explorer and like all these different things. I'm like, this is absolutely fascinating. And then once that little like seed was in my head, it was really difficult to get out and then you start to think about like all the potential use cases and then USDC was really starting to pick up in a meaningful way. And so, like, this idea of like stable coins for payments and cross border payments and remittance. And then again, you're looking at like, well, how are businesses paying globally? Like,
mm,
what is that? What does a foreign exchange payment out of it, like an invoice payment look like? And how does that work? And how does that work versus this? And how is this going to change the flow of funds? And those were the kind of things that started just circulating through my head like all the time.
yeah, that makes sense. And you touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious on the kind of concrete rationale on your side. Why now? I mean, you're clearly on the path, you and your team are clearly on the path to building uh, a really strong business on crypto rails. So, what was the rationale behind kind of starting this journey now?
Yeah, so when I left Amex, I went to Circle, and um, Circle was it was an amazing experience. That's actually how I met my co-founder. So Joseph was leading crypto and fintech product strategy for Walmart, and I was at Circle focused on these sort of like large enterprise non-crypto use cases that were leveraging stablecoins. It was very much consultative, right? Like we would come in and say like, what is your stablecoin strategy? Or like, what is your emerging payment strategy? And here's how stablecoins could come into that. And Joseph was on the other side, tasked by Walmart and tasked by their shareholders. What is this stablecoin thing? What is Circle? Like,
Mm,
go figure this out, right? Where these really large companies, they have full teams focused on figuring out how to disintermediate the networks, how to lower costs, how to improve efficiency. And so, we worked on some interesting strategies, and I worked with a number of other, operators as well. And and at that point in time in 2021 or 2022, it was um it was very much like, what does this look like? What could this look like? Right.
mhm,
And I think now, given where we're at in the market and the maturity of the market, it's moving from what could this look like and what it's moved to like, how do we do this?
yeah.
Right. And it's shifted. It's like, how do we do this? And I think the problem with these larger organizations is that they move very slowly. They're it's difficult for them to integrate new technology into their stacks. And they don't have the time or bandwidth or um, ability to like hire the amount of people and put the development effort needed into translating what all the benefits at the bottom of the stack into a usable product that an end user can consume.
Hmm.
And so that's why now is really like an important time to start to focus at that layer and to create to take the benefits that we've all known for several years, right? That we've all seen merging at the bottom of that stack, that infrastructure layer, like all the amazing like things that have developed over the past, decade more. Like,
Yeah.
how do we translate that into usable consumer products?
Yeah. Something we notice in the chats we have with fintechs these days is the conversation, to your point, is less like what could crypto look like and more like here are the distinct buckets of things we're thinking about. We're thinking about stablecoin issuance. We're thinking about a chain. We're thinking about a wallet and we're thinking about money movement. How and yield usually. How do these things come together in a meaningful way? And we found that people on the other side have those distinct categories already figured out, which is a to your point, just like a major change from back in the day. Very cool. Uh, and it's I also love the founding story of how you and Joseph kind of met together and kind of came from different angles, but very much a similar background in that as well. Um, yeah, I mean, on the topic of the company, Rhythmic, can you tell me more about what the product is, where you guys are at, and what you're building?
Yeah. Again, a little on the like early slash stealth side, but happy to at least kind of give you the theoretical sort of thesis and like what we're building. Um, but yeah, like you know, we believe that it should be easy for brands and fintechs and traditional businesses to be able to offer stablecoin powered financial products like payments and rewards and yield to their end users without them having to undertake the complexity of building the entire stack themselves. Um, and we wrap all of we're wrapping all of what we're developing in a like a program management sort of stack too. So like, we understand that the complexity of these types of products are limiting to businesses that are not fintechs themselves. And so, we own the end user and manage all of the program management and all of that as well. Um, and again, we think that, we want to be able to bring stablecoin features to like the users. So there's this like there needs to be this sort of veneer, this like obfuscation layer, this consumer layer that sits on top of all the complicated products to be able to make something that people are comfortable with and use, has real usability. And so that's what we're kind of working toward. And what that could look like, because we think of it as multiple financial products, is you know rewards cards that can adapt to the way you spend. It can look like some innovative cashback methodology. It can look like the ability to borrow and lend. And so again, there's such a tremendous amount of value that starts to accrue at because of blockchain. And how do we take that and pass that on to the end user?
Makes total sense. And I think it's a critical component of where the space is headed today, where people want a lot of that. They do want the veneer and the program management around how do I get on chain. And so on that, like what are some of the requirements that have come up through the process of whatever you can share, through the
Sure.
process of kind of figuring out the product? Like what are those kind of components that you've been thinking about or are top of mind for your customer base?
Yeah. So I think there's a few different things that we've heard from the market, right? At the sort of entry point here, right? If you think about even like an existing business that's either crypto native or crypto adjacent, what we've heard is like even though there's been a tremendous amount of development at that infrastructure layer, it's still like somewhat complicated to figure out like how to navigate the choices and options and whatever, and to be able to like easily integrate it into their their offering and their stack, especially if it's not their core business, right? Like if their core business is not payments, if their core business is not money movement, but it adds to the value of their core business, it's still a little difficult for them to be able to like really integrate it in. And once you add the the sort of processes and complexities that are required in managing a financial product within your offering, chargebacks, like mistakes, consumer confusion. Like once you add all those things in, it's could be prohibitive to some teams, right? And so like in the short term, there's that. As you move sort of like outside of the crypto native businesses and into businesses that are that maybe already offer financial products or would benefit similarly would benefit from adding financial products, the added complexity of trying to figure out how to take that financial product that now stablecoin based wallets, various chains, underlying assets across multiple, like once you try to,
Yeah.
they just throw their hands up. They're like, look, we know there's benefit here, but like even if you make it easy for me, like it's probably still too much.
Mm,
And then the last piece is like, I think one of the biggest sort of roadblocks here that we're hearing that needs to be overcome is like, we've already built an entire sort of product base on top of this old stack of financial solutions, and like they can't see how to replace it out. And so a lot of people are thinking about bolt-ons versus replacing,
okay.
and like a bolt-on is not going to necessarily like give the type of value that is needed to be able to make a compelling product in the market.
Right. The idea
And
of a migration is daunting. That's a lot. And it's to your point, to your previous point in the beginning, like that is like years and years of COBOL and process and like existing systems and file transfers that now need to be re-architected, and that's a major cost to any legacy company.
yeah, and if you think this is it's a really good point. And I think if you think about like big companies do it, but how do they do it? They typically rely on the business that they're bringing in to manage a lot of that complexity. And I don't think that's matured yet in our space, right? So like again, going back to my Amex days, like I remember one of my largest customers, again, this is more B2B versus B2B2C. There's no consumer end, but it's similar sort of mindset. One of my largest customers had to migrate their ERP. Yeah, it's massive. I mean, it's a year-long effort with multiple teams focused on it, consultants, this and that, right? But they knew it needed to be done. But the amount that they relied on, I think it was like Workday was coming in or something. The amount that they relied on that company to manage that transition was massive. And that I don't think was the case before these like cloud ERPs really started to come in, right? And so like as these migrations started to happen and as new technology came in, the winners were the Workdays of the world who came in with like more API based products, who
Oh
who
yes.
relied heavier on the cloud rather than database, who brought like their own sort of like solution engineering teams into the mix, who like offered wraparound services in addition to just the software. And
Yep.
like,
The payroll
yeah,
business on top of, oh yes. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. And so kind of so what I'm hearing is the breakdown between companies that are not doing money movement but are interested in exploring money movement. There's a certain set of concerns of how do I even go about reasoning this, which is pretty similar to your background and the conversations you're probably used to having. And then there's this like people that are already doing money movement and are large. How do we reason about this in a way that makes sense for the org, whether it's a full on port over or a bolt on, like an add on kind of component, or there's still kind of decisions that need to be made that still feel complex. And so building on that, like what parts of the stack do you still find pretty mature versus what still feels kind of early and fragmented in the conversations with the money movement players?
Yeah, so I I think there is definitely a lot of maturity, right? Like we are seeing it. It feels very different today than it did a few years ago, right? Like, and you're starting to see this. true sort of like real world level applications starting to emerge. So I do think there is some maturity, but what I have not seen yet, which is part of the sort of like inspiration for Rhythmic, is that the ability to coordinate and to create at the consumer level, the product level, a usable product that like normal non-crypto related people or even not technically savvy people can start to benefit from. And the other thing is, I think there's been so much concentration at this infrastructure layer and at the sort of bottom of the stack or all the way at the top of the stack
Mm,
that the end user hasn't like fully realized the value yet, right? And that's like a very complicated problem to solve, right? Which is like, how do you compete against Amex for a consumer card? How do you compete against, these massive companies for payroll and for, whatever it is, whatever the end user case is? Like, how do you become top of wallet? How do you become the preferred bank account? How do you do all these things? And I don't see maturity yet there. I think there are people who have gotten close. There are people who have gotten close, but again, most of those are operating in a silo and only being able to impact like their direct customer. It's typically at a direct to consumer level.
yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Um, you mentioned this a little bit, but feel free to not answer this if this is alpha, but can you tell us the story behind the name?
Okay. Um,
Sorry if it's a
n-
hot topic.
no, no, it's funny. So um, we were kind of going back and forth on a number of different things. Um, and Joseph and I had worked together in the past and done some other things, and we were working with a former colleague of ours, and we were kind of going through some naming convention and various things, and we were loading a bunch of stuff into chat, and we're just like going through all these different things, and it's like I I hate names. I can't like I just hate them all. Like this, I'm like that guy who's like, what about this name? And I'm like, I hate it. What about this name? I hate
Yeah.
it. Like almost every name I hate. And I was like reviewing all these different ones, and I was like, well, I kind of like this one, but like, what would be better, or what's good about this one versus that one? I was literally just like going back and forth with chat on a Sunday afternoon or something, and I don't remember what the name was, but it was like this one name, and it said it has a nice rhythm to it, and I was like, okay. And then I was like, rhythmic. And I'm like, oh, that'd be really cool. And like, you can't, I don't know if I'm gonna make people dizzy, but like, I have like records all over the place. I love
Oh, cool.
music. I used to play in a band. That's the real alpha. I used to play in a band. No,
Okay.
go. Uh, and, um, and then you start to think about like this idea of rhythm and this sort of like wave, this peaceful, this like kind of things coming together, something that you kind of like, and think about like people's like rhythms of their lives and when things start to settle in and create
Mm,
like this consistency, and then I'm like, and it's like when you think about that end user and you think about finding that rhythm and figuring out how to like make this something that's a day to day, every, like a usable product that impacts people's lives, it just fit. And so it was an instant yes for everybody. We just were all like, oh yeah, for
got it.
sure. This is
That
it.
makes sense.
So
Yeah.
thank you, chat, but not in the normal way. Like chat
Yeah.
didn't pick the name, it just led it to it.
Yeah. That's how that stuff happens. I love it. Um, okay. Well, I had two hot take questions. So it's just lightning round style hot take questions. If you're ready to get into it. We have about 5 minutes. So,
All
um,
right, let's do it.
all right. If Stripe or Amex launched an on-chain product tomorrow, what are they going to get wrong?
Well, and I hope I don't get in trouble with my other Amex folks. I think a company like Amex will just do the bare minimum, right? Like which you sort of already see, right? Like they won't want to be in the flow. They won't want to. They'll just want to do enough to like appeal to shareholders. And
That was doing the crypto thing.
yeah, and
Yeah,
they'll
yeah.
want to do enough to like put a product into the market that's somewhat compelling, that leverages buzz to be able to like loop to start to bring people in. Now, I say that, but I will to like I love American Express. I'm an American Express cardholder still to this day, and I
Of
still love all the people I
right
used to work
on.
with.
Yeah.
The thing that they will get wrong will still be good for the industry, and it will still lead towards adoption. I think I talk about this all the time. Like people are like, well, what about competitors? Competitors are good.
Yep.
Competitors lead to more adoption. The
Yep.
more somebody gets comfortable on the fringe of the technology, the better it is for the industry. Um, and obviously, Stripe is doing a lot in the space with their acquisitions, and I think that's great. Also, very good. I think where they'll run into issues is like they they acquire a product and then they rule out potential customers because like some customers may go, that actually competes with my product or it competes with my broader vision or whatever it is, right? So there's always that risk as you grow as a company, any company, not just Stripe, as you grow as a company. When you make decisions to acquire or to go into new markets, whatever it is, you risk potentially isolating a segment of your, existing base or future customer base, which again leads to more opportunity for new companies to emerge and start to compete.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, lots to talk about after this. That's also got my wheels spinning on a couple things. Awesome. Okay, last question. What's your take on stablecoins becoming the next card network?
I think there's an inevitability to it. I think it'll be very difficult and it will be a long process to disintermediate incumbents, and I think incumbents will do what's required to stay relevant. And I think that there's a lot of really great things that the networks could do today to leverage stablecoins, and to incorporate it into their network. But I think I'm a believer, right? I'm a believer that like network effects will take place, that decentralization has the ability to like do some pretty incredible things. And stablecoins in particular, like the ability to transfer value globally, quickly, uh, seamlessly is incredible. And we're just starting to see the real evolution. I feel like, I mean, this like companies like M0 coming out and all. I mean, just like these amazing companies, like really figuring out like how to start to take advantage of the programmatic nature of the token itself. Super interesting. Um, and again, hopefully, companies like Rhythmic start to emerge, and more companies like us start to emerge to address that consumer layer. Because once you figure out how to get the millions and millions and millions of users who are not participating in this network today, the more the network itself starts to grow. And when we all start to work together, it becomes very compelling.
Yeah, that resonates a lot with how we've thought about things at the wallet layer. The whole point is, of course, you have to make it easy for the set of consumers that have been unable to access crypto in the past, either because of friction or, access or whatever. But you don't want to lose on the composability because the composability is what gets you these network effects. The fact that you can use a stablecoin in TradFi and in DeFi, earn yield in different places, put that yield back in equities or the traditional market or crypto again. I think that spectrum is the beauty of being on chain, and I'm excited to see what that can really bring to the next kind of wave of stablecoin enabled consumer products, which is what y'all are focusing on. Love it. Yeah, anything to close out here, Aaron, on where people can find you, final remarks, what's next? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is the first public conversation about Rhythmic, so nowhere to find us yet. We have the website domain. Eventually, you'll be able to go to rhythmic.io, but today it's it'll probably try to sell you like some random other domain, whatever GoDaddy puts up on their. their waiting pages. But yeah, I mean, look, find us on LinkedIn, Aaron Marks on LinkedIn for Rhythmic. I think just we hope to make a big splash in the next couple of months with some announcements and some early customers. So just stay tuned. And um, I would just say, like in general, like buckle up. We are moving. I mean, it is coming, right? Like the move into end user adoption is coming. Like we're starting to see it bubble up already, and I'm super excited to see how other teams also start to tackle the same problem.
Incredible. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. We'll stay tuned and extremely excited about the progress y'all are making at Rhythmic and to stay posted on what's coming. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much, Aaron.
Thank you.